The Solomon Islands are located about 1,200 miles northeast from the Australian coast, in the group of South Pacific islands known as Melanesia. Studded with palm trees and white sand beaches, its islands make up an archipelago, surrounding one of the largest lagoons in the world, the New Georgia Sound. The Spanish explorer Don Alvaro de Mendana discovered the islands in the 1560s. He was looking for the biblical King Solomon's mines, hence the name for the islands. An Australian mining company has just begun exploration, so gold may yet be hidden in the dense tropical jungle. This former British protectorate gained independence in 1978. It is now a constitutional monarchy, with the bulk of the 350,000 inhabitants subsisting on local agriculture and fishing. Honiara, the capital, is located on the lovely island of Guadalcanal. But these islands were not always so peaceful. From the summer of 1942 to early 1943, the island played host to the longest battle in American history, immortalizing such names as Bloody Ridge and Red Beach.
2 months after Midway, the Pacific War shifts to the Solomon Islands, where Japan will lose its more experienced pilots, many of them at Guadalcanal, which became known to the Japanese as the Island of Death. Located south of Japan's major naval and air base at Rabaul, Guadalcanal threatens Allied supply lines. To stop the Japanese construction of an air base, American troops invade Guadalcanal. It is the first Allied amphibious action of the Pacific. The Guadalcanal campaign is the beginning move of a land, sea, and air campaign to recover the Solomons and force Japan from Rabaul.
55 years later, the remnants of war still litter the jungles of Guadalcanal, where an estimated 30,000 Japanese and 7,000 American soldiers lost their lives.
And these 4 guns were placed there by the Japanese, and what they hoped was that they'd be able to shoot at Allied ships passing through there, but as far as we know, they weren't actually effective at all. They were pretty hard to maneuver, and in actual fact they did no damage and just sat there for a couple of years, and eventually the Japanese departed and left them there. Catalina's mean quite a lot to me because my uncle served in the RNZAF, the New Zealand Air Force, in World War II, and after the war had finished and Japan had capitulated, he was taking off from a lagoon in the Gilbert and Ellice Islands, and the man he was flying with evidently had been a little bit too long flying. Instead of pulling the joystick, as they used to call it, back, he pushed it in and they crashed, and 9 of the 12 survived, but the other 3, including my uncle, died there. And a little bit sad as it was after the war had actually finished.
Under the sea, it's a different story. The warships, guns, and implements of destruction have been transformed by the sea into a radiant array of life. These artificial reefs are overgrown with coral, anemone, and other animal and plant life, providing food and shelter for an entire ecosystem. This is the wreck of the Hiroko Amaru, a Japanese supply ship sunk off the coast of Guadalcanal during the early days of the battle. In fact, it is the same ship shown at the beginning of the newsreel footage. The Spirit of Solomon's, a 125-foot luxurious yacht, was our home for the 10 days we spent diving the many reefs surrounding the Solomon Islands. It was comfortable and spacious, with ample room for relaxing in the large outdoor dining area and sun deck. Cameras ready, we get into our dive gear to explore the marine life resident in these warm 83-degree waters. Diving at sites only a few minutes from the boat is from these metal skiffs, called tinnies by the crew. Underwater, the terrain is varied, with most diving done along a picturesque wall lined with radiant coral, teeming with interesting and photographic critters. For our first dive, we will explore one of the many caverns along these walls. This one is appropriately called the Slot. Outside the cavern, schools of barracuda and jacks hover along the wall, waiting to have their picture taken. Although large fish were not prevalent during our trip to the Solomon Islands, we did see a few white-tip reef sharks and a graceful manta ray with a wingspan of about 12 feet. The octopus is actually a member of the mollusk family, which includes clams, oysters, snails, cuttlefish, and squid. Octopi have the most complex brain of the invertebrates, animals without backbones. They have long-term and short-term memories. The octopus learns to solve problems by trial and error and experience. Once the problem is solved, the octopus remembers and is able to solve it and similar problems repeatedly. When threatened, the octopus releases a cloud of purple-black ink to confuse the enemy. The ink, however, is toxic to the octopus, who must escape the area of its release. Color change is initiated by the eyes. If the octopus is disturbed, cells in the skin will be active in an attempt to blend in with the surroundings. These cells consist of 3 bags containing different colors: which are adjusted individually until the background is matched. Coloration reflects mood, white for fear and red for anger, with brown being the usual color. Sense of touch is acute in the suckers. The rim of the cups are particularly sensitive. A blindfolded octopus can differentiate between objects of various shapes and sizes as well as a sighted octopus. In some species, the male can be distinguished by greatly enlarged sucker discs on his tentacles, which are used to remove a mass of sperm from within his mantle cavity and inserted into the mantle cavity of the female. Within 2 months after mating, the female hatches strands of clustered eggs which are attached to the ceiling of her lair. More than 200,000 eggs may be laid, although only 1 or 2 will survive to become adults. She shields the eggs, oxygenates them with streams of water from her siphon, and cleans them with her suction cups. Most females will not eat after laying eggs and will die soon after they hatch. Young octopi are carried about in water currents for about a month before they settle to the bottom. Moray eels are fish, but lack pectoral and pelvic fins, causing them to swim more like a snake than a fish. Protruding nostrils provide them with a keen sense of smell to compensate for their relatively poor eyesight. Feeding at night, they spend most of their time hiding in a crevice, often with their head protruding. There is a large population of friendly and very photographic lionfish in the reefs surrounding the Solomon Islands, but don't touch their fins, since some species can inflict severe pain due to the toxins coating the tips. This small 3-inch fish is called an ocellated lionfish and is quite rare. The giant tridacna clam can grow to 4.5 feet and live to 200 years. Like this thorny oyster, clams and other bivalves filter tiny plants and small animals from the water. Don't be fooled by the playful nature of these adorable anemone fish, or clownfish. They are very aggressive in defending their territory, which is the region around their host anemone. This is a symbiotic relationship, with the clownfish helping to bring food to its host, which in turn protects it from predators who are not immune to the anemone's toxins. All anemone fish mature as males, with sex reversal and growth controlled by the dominant female. In the absence of a female, the largest male will turn into a female, and the next largest juvenile will rapidly mature to form the mating couple. The growth of the remaining juveniles will be stunted by the adult pair. The Solomon Islands are a virtual candy store for the close-up photographer, looking for small and rare critters. To eat, sea cucumbers trap sand and debris with their mucus-covered tentacles, with their digestive systems filtering the intake for organic particles. When threatened, some sea cucumbers can expel their spaghetti-like organs to discourage predators. These nudibranchs, or sea slugs, or naked snails, are rarely more than a few inches long. Some photographers consider them to be the most beautiful creatures in the world, if you can find them. Their bright colors warn predators of the poison in their bodies. Each animal contains both male and female sex organs. The mating pair exchange semen through a common aperture on the side of their bodies, fertilizing both animals. Eggs are laid in long ribbons, often seen attached to the reef. To date, about 3,000 species have been cataloged worldwide. These flatworms are close relatives of the nudibranch. Unlike most jellyfish, which travel thousands of miles in the ocean currents, these unusual upside-down jellies reside on the sandy bottom in shallow water. This pair of ghost pipefish, related to the seahorse, never seem to wander more than a few feet from their home, despite the continuing harassment from underwater photographers. The red leaf fish mimics the behavior of a floating leaf to hide from predators. It has the peculiar habit of shedding its skin from time to time. Shrimp are often called reef doctors, forming symbiotic relationships with anemone, plants, and small fish. They provide the cleaning service, removing parasites and small sores from their partners. Triggerfish get their name from the first dorsal spine, which can be locked in a raised position resembling a trigger. When threatened, they will retreat to a cave and lock themselves in place. Their sharp teeth and strong jaws allow them to eat sea urchins and other crustaceans, including lobsters. This aggressive male yellow-margined triggerfish is guarding his nest of eggs, which the female deposits in a 5-foot depression in the sand. Triggerfish have been known to bite divers who intrude on their nesting territory, so we will back off a bit. Unfortunately, this Titan triggerfish, the largest of the species, has found the nest and, along with several other intruders, proceeds to gobble up the eggs. The yellow-margined triggerfish, who aggressively chased me away, can only look on from a distance as his nest is devoured. Rounding out the parade is an array of colorful and interesting inhabitants of these coral reefs. As we have seen, the variety of fish and invertebrate species in the waters surrounding the Solomon Islands is vast, providing great photo opportunities. No less spectacular is the brilliant array of soft corals and sponges, which is the hallmark of many of the South Pacific Islands, adding to the enjoyment of this memorable diving adventure.